America's oldest unsolved mystery. In the quiet annals of American history, there are stories that settle deep into the national consciousness, tales of courage, of discovery, and of profound, unanswered questions. And none is older or more haunting than the mystery of the lost colony of Roanoke. It is a story that begins on the windswept edge of a vast, unknown continent, a place of dense forests and shimmering shorelines. In 1587, a small flicker of English life, about 115 men, women, and children, planted themselves on Roanoke Island. They were a seed of an empire meant to grow and flourish. But within 3 years, they were gone. They had vanished from the earth, leaving behind only silence, and a single, cryptic word carved into a wooden post. This is the story of where they went. The colony's final days. Their leader was a man named John White, an artist, a governor, and a grandfather. Among the colonists were his own daughter, Eleanor Dare, and her husband. And it was there, in that wild and unfamiliar land, that Eleanor gave birth to a daughter, Virginia Dare, the very first English child born in the Americas. It was a moment of profound hope. But hope, in the 16th century wilderness, was a fragile thing. Supplies began to run desperately low. The carefully packed provisions from England dwindled, and the colonists' relationships with some of the local Native American tribes grew tense and frayed. Facing a hungry, uncertain future, the settlers made a difficult choice. They persuaded their governor, John White, to sail back to England to plead for a relief mission. He agreed, reluctantly. He left his family, his daughter and his infant granddaughter, with the promise that he would return as soon as he could. He expected to be gone for a year at most. He would be gone for 3. Fate, in the form of the Great Spanish Armada, intervened. England was suddenly at war, and every available ship was commandeered for the defense of the realm. White was trapped, an ocean away, while his colony waited. The only clue, Croatoan. When John White finally managed to return in August of 1590, on his granddaughter's 3rd birthday, he was met not by a welcoming party, but by a profound and eerie silence. As his boat approached the shore, no smoke rose from the chimneys, no dogs barked, no children played along the water's edge. He found the settlement, but it was a ghost of a settlement. The houses had been carefully taken down, not ransacked or burned. The heavy cannons and small boats were gone. There were no bodies, no bones, no signs of a struggle or a panicked flight. It was as if the colony had been methodically and peacefully packed up and moved. And then he saw it. Carved deep into a sturdy palisade post at the entrance to the former settlement was a single, stark word, Croatoan. On another tree nearby, he found the first 3 letters of the same word, CRO. This was not a random carving. Before he had left, White had given the colonists a specific instruction. If they had to leave Roanoke, they were to carve their destination into a tree or a post. And, crucially, if they left under duress, if they were in danger, they were to carve a Maltese cross above the name. John White searched everywhere. There was no cross. Theory 1. The assimilation evidence. The leading theory. The clue was not nearly as cryptic as legend would have us believe. In fact, it was a clear and direct message. Croatoan was the name of a nearby barrier island, known today as Hatteras Island. It was also the name of the people who lived there, a tribe of Native Americans who, unlike some of their neighbors, were consistently friendly to the English. Their chief, Manteo, had even traveled to England and was a trusted ally. The absence of the distress cross was everything. It signaled that the colonists had not been attacked. They had left willingly. They were telling John White exactly where they had gone. White himself understood this. He desperately wanted to sail the 50 miles south to Croatoan, but a brewing storm and a mutinous, weary crew refused to make the journey. Defeated, he was forced to turn his ship back toward Europe, never to see the shores of America again. He would die without knowing the fate of his family, though he believed until the end that they were living with their allies. And for centuries, his belief was supported by whispers and reports. Later explorers and settlers in the Carolinas spoke of encountering Native Americans with European features, with gray eyes and the ability to read from a book, who claimed their ancestors were white. They were the people of the Croatoan. Archaeological discoveries that change everything. For a long time, this was where the story stalled, caught between history and folklore. But in recent decades, archaeology has picked up the trail. On Hatteras Island, the historic Croatoan, and at sites just inland, archaeologists have unearthed compelling physical proof. They have found English pottery from the 16th century, the kind the colonists would have used, mixed in directly with Native American artifacts. They have dug up a Tudor-era sword hilt, a small writing slate with a faint letter still visible, and metal tools of European origin. These items weren't found at a separate English site, but within the homes and fire pits of the Native American villages. The story etched in the soil was not one of conflict, but of cohabitation. The English were not just trading with the Croatan, they were living with them. Debunking the massacre and Spanish attack theories. These discoveries make the more violent theories of a massacre all but impossible. An attack by a hostile tribe would have left behind signs of a battle, bodies, burned structures, and arrowheads. The Roanoke site had none of these. The Spanish, who certainly viewed the English colony as a threat, were meticulous record keepers. Their archives contain no mention of an attack on Roanoke. The evidence simply doesn't point to a bloody end. It points to a deliberate choice. Faced with starvation during one of the worst droughts in 800 years and abandoned by their home country, the colonists of Roanoke likely made the only logical decision they could. They walked away from their failed English settlement to join a thriving, well-established Native American one. They chose to live. The verdict: what really happened to the lost colony? And so, the great mystery of the lost colony of Roanoke may not be a mystery of a vanishing at all. It is a story of adaptation and survival. The settlers were not lost. They were absorbed. They packed up their belongings, carved their destination for their governor to find, and began new lives as part of a new community. The colonists didn't disappear into the mists of history. Their bloodlines, their stories, and their legacy likely merged into the Croatan people, their DNA woven into the fabric of a nation they had unknowingly helped to begin. The final chapter of Roanoke isn't an empty page. It's simply written in a language we are only just beginning to fully understand.